Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today let's talk about hypothesis testing. So I always want to talk about test hypothesis, but it could be a long video. So to make a video short, let's cut this video or break this video down into several small episodes. Okay, the first episode of today's video is about the term hypothesis. Let's understand the term hypothesis, and the next couple episodes will be about significance level, critical values, how to make the decision, what the decision rule, or the process of test hypothesis, or the process of test hypothesis. Okay, so hypothesis. Okay, let's focus on the term hypothesis for today's video. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, let's look at hypothesis. Okay, the first episode of hypothesis testing. So first, let's look at hypothesis. The definition of hypothesis in statistics. Hypothesis is a statement about a population parameter. So it is a statement about a population parameter. Let me just give you an example of population parameter. Now, suppose you have population data. So this never happened in reality, but we assume that we have the population data. So the population contains this many observations, and then so for each observation we have we have an ID, right? We have a number. So observation number 1, observation number 2, observation number n, and you should have a variable. And the thing you're interested in, it can take on different values. And suppose this variable is test score. And then for first student, you have test score, second test score. This is the thing you're interested in and can take on different values. And then this is the population data. So based on population data, you can compute some population parameters. For example, population mean, you can compute a population mean or easily sum all the values and divide it by number of observations. Right? This is one population parameter, or you can compute the population standard deviation, right? So that's sum squared each value minus average divided by population size, right? These are population parameters. A hypothesis is just a statement about population parameter. There are 3 things you need to keep in mind when it comes to hypothesis testing in statistics. First is hypotheses always come in pairs. Then there are always a pair of hypotheses. One hypothesis is called null hypothesis. We just use H sub null or H sub 0. So we call this NULL, null hypothesis. This is a hypothesis being tested. So we're testing whether null hypothesis is true. If null hypothesis is untrue, we need an alternative hypothesis to accept. So we have alternative hypothesis, either H sub 1 or H sub A. So we call this alternative hypothesis. So because hypothesis is a statement about population parameter, the example could be null hypothesis statement, so it's an equation. So that's mu, I suppose use this color. So mu, population mean, equals 85. And mu not equal to 85. That could be a pair of hypotheses, right? I want to test whether population mean is different from 85, right? So, this is the first thing you should know. Hypothesis, there are always a null hypothesis. You're testing whether null hypothesis is true. If null hypothesis is can be justified, can be verified, you should have an alternative hypothesis to accept, right? You have a null and alternative hypothesis. And the second point is the research question is reflected in alternative hypothesis. So for example, how do I know the alternative one is mu is not equal to 85? It depends on my research question. For example, what are you interested in? What is the research question about? Right? So if I'm interested in whether population mean is different from 85, and now my alternative hypothesis should be mu not equal. It's not equal to 85, right? And null hypothesis will be mu equal to 85. So this is my research question. And most of the time, we want to reject null hypothesis. If I'm thinking population mean is different from 85. I want to test whether it's true. So that's, this is our research question. This is our research question. Or if you're interested in whether population mean is greater than 85, and that could be alternative hypothesis, mean greater than 85. Right? This is a population parameter, a statement about population parameter. So if you write alternative one is sample mean greater than 85, this is sample statistic. This easily shows that obviously you don't understand what hypothesis means. Hypothesis is a statement about population parameters, so you should have a population mean mu there. Okay, and if this is your question, I'm interested in whether population mean is greater than 85, so the null hypothesis, the corresponding null hypothesis is mu less than or equal to 85. If I'm interested in whether population mean is less than 85, that is my alternative hypothesis, and null hypothesis is mean greater than or equal to 85. You see, so this is my research question. Normally, most of the time, we want to reject null hypothesis and accept the alternative. Let me give you a more intuitive example. And suppose we have two populations, okay? I'm thinking maybe female student test scores should be greater than male student test score. So how do I test this hypothesis? How do I state the appropriate null and alternative hypotheses? So I'm thinking, okay, alternative one, this is my research question. Alternative one should be female student test score, average score for female students. If my question is whether female student test score is greater than male student test score, that should be my alternative hypothesis. That should be my alternative hypothesis. And the corresponding null hypothesis should be average score for female students less than or equal to average score of male students. Okay, this is your concern, this is your question, this is what you're interested in, whether female students is greater. And then you want to reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative to justify your question, to justify your concern. Right, and this is the second point. The first point is hypothesis is a statement about population. Right, they're always a pair of hypotheses, and the second point is that alternative hypothesis should reflect your research question. You want to accept the alternative hypothesis most of the time. Okay, you should know based on the research question how to state the appropriate null and alternative hypotheses. Okay, and the third point is, look at this. Look at these three pairs of hypotheses. The third point is the equal sign. The equal sign always occur in null hypothesis. You see the equal sign. The equal sign always occurs in null hypothesis. Why is that? Because we need a value to plug into our formula. Because when we test a hypothesis, we always assume null hypothesis is true. And then we assume null hypothesis is true, and then we see how likely we observe the sample statistic. Okay, we just assume this null hypothesis is true, and then we look at what the probability that we observe a sample statistic. For example, in this case, a sample mean. We just assume null hypothesis is true. So when we make that assumption, we need a value to plug into the formula. We need a value for the population mean, right? So we need an equal sign here. We need an equal sign in null hypothesis, because we always assume null hypothesis is true, and then we look at how likely we observe the corresponding sample statistic. If it's very unlikely, and we reject null hypothesis. If it's likely, and then that means the sample data support the null hypothesis. Okay. Yeah, so this is about hypothesis. You should know how to state the null and alternative hypothesis, and equal sign always occur in null hypothesis. And most importantly, the alternative hypothesis should always reflect your research question, or your research question is reflected in alternative hypothesis. Okay, so next episode we'll look at the significance level. What is significance level? Why do we call it significance level? Right? How does significance level probability that you make type 1 error? Okay, so we talk about that. So that's the second episode of hypothesis testing. This video is solely on the definition, or how do you understand the term hypothesis. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Yeah, this is today's video. Hope you find it helpful. Any questions, comments, please let me know. The next one is about the next episode of hypothesis testing. It's going to be about significance level and a critical value. A critical value, how to calculate, how to find critical value based on significance level. Okay, and 1 or 2 tail test. Okay, stay tuned. See you next time. Bye.